Greetings from Arizona. This is Tony Kuiper. Recently, I released a beta version of the upcoming TK8 plugin. It's built on Adobe's UXP architecture, which will be the preferred platform for plugins going forward. There are 3 TK8 modules that pretty much follow the layout of the TK7 panel. There is a TK8 CX module that's similar to the TK7 CX module, and a TK8 combo module that's like the TK7 combo module. It's important to keep in mind that the CX and combo modules have the same functions. They're just arranged differently to provide alternate docking options in the Photoshop workspace. Finally, there is a TK8 multi-mask module whose mask making functions mimic those of the TK7 Go module. I thought I'd take a few minutes to go over some of the changes in the new TK8 beta modules compared to those in TK7. This will give photographers a chance to see the new features and how to include them in their workflow. I prefer to have the vertical CX module arranged like the toolbar panel, and the multi-mask module tucked above the layers and channels panels where I can easily access it. But you can arrange the different modules in whatever way works for you. The most obvious change with TK8 is that the buttons are bigger and the layout is more spacious. You'll notice that there are some blank areas in the user interface. These are functions still being developed and will debut when the panel is finished later this year. Tooltips are now set to be always on by default. They automatically appear at the top or bottom of the module when you roll over the buttons and sliders. These are especially helpful when you're just starting out to learn what each button does. When you don't need them anymore, tooltips can easily be turned off in the module's preferences. Simply click the TK button on each panel and click the Show Tooltips to uncheck this option. The panel resets and now the tooltips don't show up all the time. However, you can still access them by holding down the Alt key on Windows or the Option key on Mac and rolling over the various buttons. Now I'll type Control A for Select All, and you'll be able to see the modules have new and more obvious selection indicators. A multicolored frame on the CX module and an animated frame on the multi-mask module. This makes it easier to know when there is an active selection even if the marching ants are hidden. This indicator can also be turned off in the preferences if you don't want to see it by unchecking the Show Selection Indicator checkbox. Clicking this plus/minus button toggles the selection off so the indicator turns off also. One of the biggest changes in TK8 beta is that web sharpening has been significantly expanded in the CX and combo modules. These 3 buttons are all there is on the main interface, but clicking the middle gear icon button opens the new options. There's a lot of them, but don't get overwhelmed. You'll only need to have entries in the height, width, and opacity fields to actually run web sharpening. Everything else is optional, and the tooltips, accessed now by holding down the Alt or Option key, will guide you through all of them when you're ready to explore. I will mention that there are now 4 easy-to-set presets in the middle that allow you to save and access different web sharpening settings. And this bottom section allows you to automatically output the sharpened image to a folder of your choice. As an example of how web sharpening works, I'll give my sharpened image a name, Sharpened, and convert it to the sRGB color profile by checking this box. Now I can click vertical if I want to resize the image to match the chosen height, 800 pixels in this case, or I can click the horizontal button if I want the final sharpened image to match the width value, 1100 pixels here, or I can click Fit to fit the final image into a box created by the height and width values. I'll click Fit in this case, and when web sharpening is finished, I have a new properly sized image named Sharpened, and it's been converted to the sRGB color profile. I'll close this new sharpened image to show that now if I want to run web sharpening again using these same settings, I can just click this triangle on the main interface without having to go into the previous screen. So that makes it convenient to sharpen images once you have chosen your settings. Another important change is how users add their own actions to the module. In the past, there were special action sets on Photoshop's regular actions panel that needed to be used. This is no longer necessary. To add user actions to TK8-beta, first click the User Actions button here at the bottom right, and then click the plus button in this new window. You'll be asked to choose an action set from the list that appears. I'll choose my favorite actions, and then choose an action from that action set in the next list. I'll choose large frame. That action now appears on the list of user actions and can be run simply by clicking it from this menu. You can add as many actions as you like to this list. There are no longer any limits on the number of user actions that can be added to the Combo and CX modules. Button actions and instant actions also still exist in the TK8-beta plugin. The buttons indicated here are the ones that can be programmed with your personal actions. To program them, simply Control or Command click on one of the available buttons. I'll program the instant action by Control clicking on it since I'm on a Windows computer. Then, just like with the user actions, I can choose an action set, favorite actions again, and then choose an action. I'll choose Print Prep this time, as that's what I normally keep programmed into my instant action button. And that completes the programming. Now, when I click the instant action button, it plays that Print Prep action and adds this adjustment layer and mask to my layers panel. The last thing I'll mention about the CX and Combo modules is that color tagging is still available. Right-click on any button to make it more prominent with a stronger color, and right-click again to turn it off. Color tagging also works on the TK actions, where right-clicking brings up the color menu so you can choose a highlight color for the different menu items. And it also works on the user actions, so you can easily color code these as well. Alright, I'm going to close this image and move over to the Multi-Mask module. It has several changes also. The main user interface has these large buttons now where you can select your type of mask. Preset lights, darks, and midtones, zone masks, infinity color masks, saturation and vibrance masks, user masks, which include channel masks, layer masks, and the active selection, and masks made using a black and white adjustment layer. This button provides access to the improved layer mask mode, which I'll go over shortly. And the TK button again opens the module's preferences. I'll click this button so we can take a look at the preset luminosity masks interface. The top part of all the different masks is where you choose your mask options. Here I can make lights masks, darks masks, and midtones masks. I can also choose different channels as the starting point for making masks. Moving down, this middle light gray section is where the mask gets modified. The 3-handle level slider of the Go module is gone as it's not supported in the UXP architecture. However, clicking the Levels Modify button opens the Properties panel where a levels adjustment can be performed, and it's now real-time, so you can see the changes as you move the slider handles. Other mask modification options include curves, black paint, white paint, mask the mask using a selection, and invert. And this is a reset button that resets all the modifications. The output section includes the dark buttons at the bottom of the module. Again, the tooltips accessed with the Alt or Option key will explain what each does. This button in the lower left opens a menu of additional output options. And for those who like the mask calculator, it's now part of the output section with this calculator button in the lower right corner. I'll just output this mask to a curves adjustment layer, and you can see that the mask preview is now the layer mask for the adjustment layer, and adjusting the curve filters the adjustment through the mask. The last thing I'll mention on the multi-mask module is the improved layer mask mode accessed with this button. In layer mask mode, everything affects the layer mask on the active layer. 2-up mode is again present in the multi-mask module. You can choose vertical or horizontal. I'll click vertical here since I have a vertical image. In 2-up mode, one window shows the mask and the other shows the image. I'll zoom out so it fits better, and then this button with 2 squares makes both images the same size. This next section allows changing the layer mask to a different luminosity mask while simultaneously observing the effect on the image. So I can test out different lights masks, darks masks, or different midtones masks, and see how each filters the adjustment differently to the image. Below that are a whole bunch of different modification options depending on what you'd like to do to this layer mask. And again, the embedded tooltips can walk you through what each of them does. To exit layer mask mode, click the X button at the top and close one of the windows. Okay, that's a brief look at the major changes in the TK8-beta plugin. I'm really excited about where this is all headed, and we'll have more information about TK8 later this year. In the meantime, I hope you'll give the beta version a try and let me know if you have any thoughts on how to make it better. This is Tony Kuiper. Best wishes for good light.